Before I start reading, just wanted to say thank you to Experimenta and to Emil and to the team. It's actually quite a privilege to be able to speak. And also I wanted to just acknowledge that when I'm talking today, that I'm talking about a group of people, not just me, that are involved in these things. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that what I might speak about and seem to have learnt is what we learnt together. I was thinking about that before, after I wrote this down. I thought I should have said that in what I wrote down. I don't believe that there should be any division between community sonic art and professional sonic art. So I work in the sonic art world. At the Australia Council for the Arts, there are separate art form categories for music and for community engagement. According to this line of institutional structuring, it would appear that musicians applying to the music category are not creating work focused on engaging the community. Presumably these musicians perform to empty halls, or maybe they don't perform at all and receive music grants so as to watch TV in their bedrooms. The notion that any form of art is not fundamentally a community action is absurd to me. Our society has such a hard-on for individual satisfaction that even our arts institutions are rapidly departing from reality. I am the director for both Jolt Arts and the Click Clack project. These are two separate sound art organisations with separate boards. Jolt is a sonic production house and creates work which is focused on international touring and events involving established artists. Click Clack has focused on workshop programs that support emerging artists. Originally they were set up as something of a machine where one organisation would feed ideas and artists into the other, working in both ways. Over the past 18 months, Jolt and Click Clack have mapped out a pathway of merging, which will be complete in mid-2017. The reason that we have decided to merge the organisations is that both Jolt and Click Clack communities, the communities and the artists involved, feel very strongly that there should be no division in what we do between community and professional artists. And this is out of the text here, but this is a conversation. It's not just going on in Melbourne. Jolt works across Asia and overseas with a range of producers and artists and all sorts of interesting people. And really collectively, the feedback has been that why is there a division between community and professional, or those sorts of dualities. The new organisation will keep the name Jolt, and any artist working with us will be treated as a valued and professional contributor. This is what we have always done anyway, so let's make that really clear within our own organisational structure. So it's fine for me to criticise the Australia Council, but what am I doing? So this does not diminish the fact that Jolt only aims to create and support sonic art through long-term relationships. The notion that you can fly in and fly out as an artist visiting a community is not an ideology we're interested in. Often, though not always, the results of such actions are shallow. We apply this approach to all of the artists we work with, emerging and established. When we book an artist, it is rarely for one event only. This philosophy is quite counter to the cookie-cutter festival model that has become a virus within the Australian arts community. Artists are being hoodwinked by the proliferation of festivals, which in my view are draining resources that could otherwise have helped artists directly. When I apply to present something at an Australian arts festival, they usually say, can you get some funding to put that on? But didn't these festivals get funding in the first place to put stuff on for artists? And aren't those arts funders paying for the same thing twice? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me, actually. I direct festivals in Asia, so I develop budgets for this type of event, and I understand that the choices that the organisers have to make. I see the budgets, and I know what you have to go through. So it with that knowledge, it even more is a crazy thing that the funders are paying twice in this situation. Venues, community arts, peak bodies and universities often work in a similar way. You can do it if you get the funding. The risk falls back then on the artist or the small arts organisation. This is not a healthy model for an arts community. If you are a large arts organisation, then you need to pay artists properly to earn that right. You also need to be prepared to enter into at least some long-term relationships with artists and smaller content creating arts organisations. Otherwise, in my view, you are contravening the Declaration of Human Rights. And I quote Article 23, number 1, everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favourable conditions of work and to protection against unemployment. Everyone without any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Everyone who works has the right to just and favourable remuneration, ensuring for themselves and their family an existence worthy of human dignity, and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Everyone has the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of their interests. It is not possible to argue that the arts are somehow insignificant and outside of human rights jurisdiction according to the Universal Declaration itself. Article 27, everyone has the right to freely participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. Everyone has the right to the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary or artistic production of which they are the author. There are real and actual legal obligations between artists, communities and employers of those artists' communities. Government-funded venues and festivals are leaving themselves wide open for class action, or at the very least complaints to Fair Work. It is not ethically justifiable for a venue to receive $4 million of government funding annually and then to charge up to $3,000 to an artist for the venue hire of the small room. In 2006, the Australia Council for the Arts estimated the average income of an artist across all art forms as $32,000 per annum. This figure includes big popular music earners and so on. When you take those people out, there's nothing left. Indeed, the art sector itself is quite happy to ongoingly insult artists. The title of that Australia Council report was, "What's Your Other Job?" I'll let you work out why that report title shits me so hard. But let's return to the community. As an artist, you're already within a community. There are people you already engage with. You may choose to work in another community, in a community that you do not usually engage with. When you do this well and mindfully, you are bringing communities together. What a good thing. Bringing diverse communities together is something that Jolt often does. For example, we have been delivering festivals in Japan in recent years, and those festivals have placed the amplified elephants, sound artists identifying with intellectual disability, on the same bill as international names such as Merzbow, legend of noise artists, of noise music. Here's a video, actually, from Jolt's 2015 festival in Japan, and I think it articulates my point. It will articulate my points. Let's do that with that. that video, there's some that got missed, but one of the things that you wouldn't have seen there was that there was also some traditional Japanese musicians performing, and there was a range of people. This is performed at Testone in Tokyo, and there were people from about 4 or 5 different countries playing there, and across different abilities as well. So, but that's kind of where Jolt's coming from, is like, what are the boundaries of performance and audience expectation as well in sound art, and how can they be explored and expanded more rapidly? So no artist in the Jolt Festival had to seek external funding to perform, and everyone was paid. So I just don't believe Australian festival organisers when they say the money doesn't work out. They're either lying to you or they're not very good at their job. I'm not going to dwell on it further. We need to talk about authorship. The first thing I would say is that authorship is entirely overrated. Our society fixates on it because our media nightly jerks off to the golden calf. Me, 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 me. And social media is fanning the flame so gloriously. Now every bullshit thing you do can be liked. But you know all of that. Anyway, everyone's an author now. But does the health of your community really need everyone to be an author? Is that really so important? My 5-year-old daughter can bang on saucepans for you, but maybe it isn't really meme-worthy. At Jolt, we think about this deeply, especially when we are presenting or creating content with people who don't have much experience in sonic art, which happens a lot at Jolt, actually. Workshops are really important in this regard. In the workshop space, a person can explore their creativity and find ways of refining or developing it without having to expose an audience to constant haphazard experimentation. Once content has emerged in a workshop, we then work with the workshop artists to see what can be drawn out into a show. Often we find in this process that some artists are really fabulous authors and other artists are really fabulous interpreters. I've always thought that the hardest thing to do in the music world is to learn and perform a score written by someone else. I personally find this very challenging to do. In the classical music world, we are constantly reminded of the genius of the composer, Beethoven or John Cage, and often men. But someone has to play that shit for it to be realised, and it can take months for a highly trained musician to realise that goal. And then you discover that the way an artist interprets the work is an art in and of itself. Here, Canadian pianist Glenn Gould leaps to mind. But I would have thought, what happens to all of those dancers in dance companies? I mean, their job is to interpret either one person's vision or a collective vision, but they have to interpret it, and that is the performance. At this point, I would like to present a second video showing the amplified elephants working with Jonathan Duckworth's resonance table, a touchscreen audio-visual instrument. Jonathan is Director of Sci-Art Labs at RMIT University. The Amplified Elephants are part of the Footscray Community Arts Centre's Art Life program for adults living with an intellectual disability. The video is made while the elephants, the Bolt Ensemble, which is an ensemble that works within Jolt, very confusing, Emile Zeal and myself, we were all working on the show titled Re-Evolution, which featured resonance and which was performed for the 2014 Melbourne Festival. So let's get that going. Is that working? I think there's a poignant silence at the beginning.
We underestimated this technology as not only a rehabilitation device, but as a means for artistic expression. Sci-Art is a research lab that I direct, at the School of Media and Communication at RMIT. The lab consolidates research in interactive media art, games, design, and digital technology towards developing new applications in allied health-related disciplines. So the resonance table was originally conceived to assist patients with traumatic brain injury relearn basic movement skills. So the table is able to track the position of the user's fingers and also the objects that they place on the table. So my friend and colleague James Hullick, who was a PhD student at the same time as myself, came to see the interactive table, and he conceived how it might be used as part of a performance he was developing with the amplified elephants. The amplified elephants are an ensemble for sound artists with an intellectual disability, and it was initiated by the Footscray Community Arts Centre and James Hullick in 2006.
It seems pretty straightforward, and that's the interesting part about how this whole thing is working. The relationship is about intuitive interfaces and intuitive sound-making processes. It's not really about trying to make things too tricky or techno-clever. The interface that is the sort of resonance table is it's a much more elegant kind of interface than the sort of interfaces we've used before. So it sort of gives the elephants in particular another layer or level of intuitive, interactive music making.
I first met Nikki through James. Nikki is the producer for the Amplified Elephants.
I think often with the kind of music that the Amplified Elephants do with the Cookback project, it's experimental music, and people often come to us and say, I'm not sure what that was about, what's the story behind that piece of music, which is a really interesting thing for me, because I think when we go to a concert we don't often ask those questions, but when it's just sound, people start asking those questions, what does it mean for me? When they were able to see what is happening, I think those questions will be answered. It'll just be about, I want to play with it myself.
Yeah, I think I was excited to see it become more than what we'd originally developed it for. So to see it being performed by musicians in front of an orchestra was beyond our wildest expectations of what we thought it could be used for.
As living systems, i.e. networks, interacting in network fashion.
This particular video emphasises resonance as it was made by students at RMIT working with SciArts. I didn't focus so much on the show and the amplified elephants themselves, which was a little bit disappointing, but still it's a very helpful tool. There is a range of interesting features about this project and regarding authorship. So number one, the elephants recorded and created all the sounds that were then manipulated by the elephants through the resonance table. The elephants wrote the scores that the Bolt ensemble played. The visuals generated by the table and the performers, the elephants, were displayed on the main large screen projection. Emile Zeal, video artist, VJ'd material projected on 3 TVs that contextualised the performance in ways that reflected biological evolution and the evolution of musical instruments. Re-evolution touched on the notion of evolution with regards to intellectual disability, but in a generally non-didactic way, although there were little moments of didactic readings and so forth in there. All artists involved refined and rehearsed their performances, challenging themselves to present their art at as high a quality as possible. And members of the Elephants conducted the Bolt Ensemble, so that was conducted by the Elephants. And I was in some ways quite invisible in this project, which was a good thing, and I facilitated it. I was on stage, but I didn't actually perform. And the thing that is not that obvious from the video and what I've just said is that there were months and months of workshops where the ideas were developed by the Amplified Elephants. I gave them a provocation, what do you think evolution is? And from that, we explored the ideas. But obviously, for some people, like for example, if you're a person with Down syndrome, you're most likely to be infertile. And so the idea of evolution or having children and families and all of those sorts of things are very delicate issues, actually, for people within the Amplified Elephants. And in our relationship that we've had over 10 years, my family and my children are very important, especially to the women in the Amplified Elephants. And so it took me about 5 years to work out what that was all about. And then we started talking about evolution, and then this project happened. So you can see that it's come from a relationship, not from someone coming up with a great idea and thinking, oh, that's the thing. There are many issues tucked within this production, and perhaps these are best unpacked at question time. But one thing I would say is this. There is often an unspoken undertone that artists who have come from community settings don't need to develop their abilities. One has to be careful with this assumption. In not challenging a person with an intellectual disability to refine their craft, one may be further cementing modes of discrimination. At Jolt, we make it very clear that when you work with us, we will be challenging you to produce your very best work. How one measures quality in art, and when we understand the revolution of the Sex Pistols, is in some ways an unanswerable question. Shit stuff can be the best thing you've ever seen, but the desire to go there, to explore one's abilities in new terrains, is what makes the creative process exciting for the artists at Jolt. I conclude with some audio of the Elephants performing on Resonance and as broadcast on ABC Classic FM. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Emil.